Okay, I'm Richard Solly, I work at Jesuit Missions, and I also worked for a long time with London Mining Network. I've got two questions. One is for Mary, and the other is probably for James. Has CAFOD got a list of UK-linked companies that are refusing to cancel debt? And if so, can you publicise that and use it to pressure them? And the second question for James is, has anything been done with famously Catholic Ant and Debt about putting pressure on Santander to put out a fossil fuel fund?
We don't have a list. It's a really good question. So part of the difficulty in solving the debt crisis is there is a severe lack of transparency, and a lot of the worst offenders they operate in the shadow banking system. So that means they're not banks, they're other shadier, more opaque in financial institutions in the City of London. And it's very, very difficult to get information about a lot of them. And so one of the things that we're also calling for is a transparent register of debt so that we can identify these companies and these firms and hold them to account. So that is one of our campaign asks as well. But we do know the names of a few. The ones that we've spoken about most frequently are HSBC and BlackRock. And those are the two that feature in our campaign. But that could be an interesting approach to campaigning on this in the years to come, and we'll definitely keep that in mind. It's a really good suggestion. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Yes, very good question, Richard. Yeah, I have seen, there was an organisation which some of you might have heard of called Make My Money Matter, which sadly are sort of wrapped up in the last few months due to funding. So, but they were, I think it was them, they had I definitely saw it on social media, drawing attention to Anton Deck's support through advertising for Santander. So yes, absolutely. I think, well, in terms of ourselves, it's not something that we focus on, but there have been efforts and sort of drawing it to their attention, because I think, yeah, there are so many ways in which these multinational corporations seek to put out good PR, and I think, obviously Anton Deck are much, known and loved, I guess, for, across the nail Catholic, you said as well. So I think, it would be great to see them stopping, great to see them ending their support for Santander through advertising. Perhaps one other thing I'll mention, which I sort of intended to mention in my presentation as well. Obviously, this, in terms of bank switching and so on, this is something that's very much for encouraging individuals to do through the big bank switch. But it's also something that Catholic institutions can do as well, be it religious orders, be it Catholic dioceses as well. One thing that we found as we were sort of looking around, you can kind of find on the Charity Commission website, your local diocese or whatever, which bank they're using. There are actually 8 of the Catholic dioceses in England and Wales that are banking with HSBC. So the concerns that Bishop Jerry has been raising, these are concerns that we hope that the diocese as well will be raising with HSBC as a client, but also consider switching to a more ethical bank as well. There's an increasing number of, be it Church of England, cathedrals and 1 or 2 dioceses that have made the switch now. So we'd love to see more Catholic dioceses and other institutions doing that as well.
Sharon?
My question's for Peter and Mary. Peter and Mary, particularly as you're quite involved with the Diocese of Brentwood, I know we bank with HS. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
I know we bank with HSBC, and I've long been on to the diocese to actually complain about it. Is there anything that you think you could do as your role on the Caritas Vicariat, do you think, Peter? Or is there some pressure that you could put on Anne-Marie in Finance Office? What do you think?
Yes, I think perhaps we ought to be more vociferous. Can you all hear me? Without that. Teacher's voice. I think we could campaign more vociferously. And I mean, I think that's something we can take away with us and have a think about how we can do that. I mean, there are two of us, because Michael is also on that area as well. So yeah, next time we have a meeting, that is certainly something that we can bring up. I mean, we talked with Father Dominic, who chairs it, about other sort of financial aspects and that kind of thing already. I think he does campaign in these areas. Sometimes I think he comes up against brick walls, but the more people, I agree, the more people who do this, the better. So anything that we can do to pass the word around and speak to Anne-Marie, as you mentioned in the office, that we can look at that.
Yeah, I know that.
It's a shame that we can't bank separately as a parish, but obviously it has to be done as a diocese.
Yeah, that's what I thought. If you and perhaps Michael could be the mouthpiece, that would be really good. All right, thank you. Thanks,
Thank you.
Sorry to take up more time, but years ago there was a London Citizens campaign that I took part in, where we were trying to get decent pay for a London living wage for cleaners at the HSBC headquarters. And we went to a branch of HSBC in Oxford Street and all queued up there, and every time somebody got to the counter to talk to the poor, suffering assistants there, we'd say, will you get your CEO to commit to a meeting with London Citizens? Till in the end, the manager phoned up the head office and said, what am I to do, because there's this branch full of people just asking for this. And so there was a meeting with the CEO. Could we do something similar with, for instance, withdrawing from funding the VIP or fossil fuels in general?
A great question, Richard. I think another really important thing, which I don't think I mentioned in my presentation as well, was perhaps if you're a customer of HSBC as an example, and if you do make the decision to switch banks, I think another really important thing is to tell your bank why it is that you switched as well. And perhaps that would be a good opportunity to really say, you know, I'm switching my bank from HSBC because you're financing these sort of projects, like the fossil gas projects in the Verde Island Passage. And I think really the more people within the bank as well that hear this, I think, you know, hopefully they can, I mean, it can sometimes be challenging to sort of call for change on the inside, but the more people are hearing this, the more hopefully that will get fed up the hierarchy and increase the pressure as well.
Microphone's just coming to you. I'm Aussie, and I discovered the other day that I have been an investor in HSBC, in Standard Chartered, for 49 years. So thank you, Mummy. And it gave me the entrance to go in and ask a question at the AGM. And I also took the contact card for the new chairman of that organisation. So I think I'm trying to illustrate that it is possible through human faces to make contact. Now, how do I discover who else in these sort of circles has shares or entree into Standard Chartered or Shell or Barclays or any others? Is there a way of getting people in touch with each other?
I was going to suggest not necessarily a Facebook for investors, but maybe something like that does exist and I'm not aware of it. I think actually something that almost everyone will have is a pension. And I also neglected to mention in my presentation that that is a really impactful way that individuals can have a look at how often the biggest amount of money that you have is being invested on your behalf. So there are now increasingly, and again, I'm not giving financial advice, but there are now increasingly a lot more fossil-free pensions that pension pots that you can have. So it's really worthwhile inquiring about that, and that is something that everybody can do. And also then at a diocese level, as an employer, you can do. And so really inquiring about, okay, where's my pension being held? Also, if you have a mortgage, that you're paying a lot of interest, and often you're paying the interest before you're paying on the principal. And again, that's one of the biggest ways in which you're participating in the financial markets. And as a client, you can go and say to mortgage, your bank, you know, what's happening to this money? I need someone to live, but it doesn't mean that I also want to be supporting these industries and organizations so differently.
I can just briefly answer that. Yeah, it was great that you were able to ask a question, Ozzy, at the Standard Chartered AGM a few days ago, and this is something that any shareholder with a sort of minimum number of shares can do. I'm going to give a quick shout out to, they're a partner on the Big Bang Switch, Just Money Movement, who are doing some great work around this sort of thing, AGM activism, working with groups like Share Action as well. I think it's also good to say that this is something that can be done also if you're not a client of that bank. I think that's important to say, because if you're a client of the bank, you're kind of like, you know, you're putting your savings with that bank, and you know they're making money from it, basically. So I think it was quite interesting in the last few days to see, you know, among Catholic groups as well, in terms of those that were quite involved in all of this. The Jesuits in Britain were at the HSBC AGM and asked a question at the AGM. But there weren't a lot of Catholic groups there. So, for example, you know, didn't see, for example, dioceses, or there weren't. Part of it is resources, no doubt. But, for example, there also weren't many religious orders that were sort of present, for example, and asking questions. And this is something that can be done. There is support for groups to do that if they are keen to do that. So, I was sort of thinking, you know, in terms of sort of building the movement out, it would be really great to see more, you know, more of that happening, more of that sort of AGM access, and more people like yourself, Ozzy, who are doing that as well. And also sort of, you know, among Catholic groups, you know, the more that we can kind of draw attention to this, the better.
Right, I'm going to allow myself the last question, and then we'll break for lunch. And mine's a live simply question. I get the impression that probably parish we heard that this morning, and certainly the two parishes have been involved with, are moderately affluent. And when we're trying to live sustainably and in solidarity with the poor, what are your thoughts about living simply award for the poor, people in parishes that are poor, where their primary concern is how do I get through this week without financial collapse?
It's a really good question. One of our fellow animators, who is in the Diocese of Brentford, who we haven't actually seen for a little while, but I know he was very involved in Canning Town, which is obviously quite an area of deprivation, and my understanding is that he lives in Gilwood, their parish, but they did an awful lot of soup runs and putting on things to help those people in that sort of area. So I think, as Peter said when we did the presentation, it is very much about your parish and what your need is. So as I said, we started the Friendly Fridays really as a warm hub, but actually it's become something else. Now, I know our fellow Catholic Church within the city centre does a lot more around actually feeding the homeless and doing soup runs and things like that. And they have got, they haven't had to have got such a big player there. But it's just about thinking about how you can have those opportunities within the parish that we've got. It's not all about raising money. I mean, as I said, Peter said, we've got lots of very generous parishioners who will support us. But actually, one of our dear parishioners always talks about sharing your time, talents and treasures. So okay, there's parishioners who will share their treasures, but you know, I know in other parishes you'll get people who will give their time and will give their talents to help. So I think it's very flexible, and you just have to sort of see what the need is. Somebody, I think you were talking about looking, seeing, discerning, and the action. It is very much seeing what the need is. And what we did once we got the award was we didn't want to stop because we felt it would fall away. So we used John Paul's Building a Caring Community resource, which is over there, to help us think about what we wanted to do next. That's all linked to the sort of 7 different areas of the RTC action plan. And basically you think as a community or as a group, what are we doing well and what do we need to do next? So you can take that into any parish, I would say, and do it. It's not just about money, it's about raising awareness and talking and meeting people and seeing what the needs are.
And just to say, just one last thing. I do know at least one other parish in our diocese who they sort of sat around and they said, well, we don't have, rough sleepers, we don't have refugees in our area. So they twinned up with another parish and then they raised money for the other parish. So they're doing that in that way. So.
Thank you. Well, between the 6 of you, you've given us an incredibly informative and thought-provoking morning. So can we just show up?